Hi everyone, let's talk about your listing photos. And this could be on GoImagine, on Etsy, on your website, on Amazon, it doesn't matter. And Amazon, I think, has regulations about what photos can be on there with a white background. I don't know because I don't sell on Amazon. But in general, people know that better photos get more sales. That's basically it. And the reason for that, I think that we all realize this, is that when you're selling to someone online, you have to present the item in the best light possible, meaning that you have to show what it actually looks like, and it has to look attractive or else people aren't going to buy it. So when people come to your shop and they see a bunch of dark photos with dark backgrounds, or they're blurry, or they can't really see the details, no one's going to buy that because they just don't, they can't be sure what they're getting. So just make sure that when you're taking your pictures, you can clearly see what it is, and that the light is right, the color is right. And that is another thing that I will mention right up front, is that you have to say somewhere in your listings, colors may vary, all right? Especially if you're doing things that are color sensitive. I sell cake decorations and I get a lot of people saying, can you match this color? And I always say no, because even if they send me a picture of something to match, I don't know what it looks like on their computer versus what it looks like on my computer versus what it's going to print out as, because I'm using food coloring ink, and that is unpredictable. I never promise to match colors. I say I can try to get it as close to what you're sending me as possible. Never promise to match colors in photos. That's a really important thing to just put up there. Like I said, especially if you're doing things that are color sensitive. But back to the quality thing. Photos give people the first impression of your shop. Okay, so if you have two photos and one is really dark and one is really bright, and then the next one is rectangular, and then the next one is dark again, and your shop looks very incohesive, it gives people the yard sale vibe, and that's not what you want. You want to have a coherent look to your shop, and I'll talk about branding in my next video, because this kind of goes into branding. But you want your photos to be consistent. You want to have the same types of backgrounds. You want to have the same types of formats, because it makes people feel like you are a real business. It's just a psychological thing. And it's also a quality thing, because if people can't see what's in the photo and they can't see it accurately, they can't see, the shape of it, they're just not going to know what they're buying, and they probably won't buy. So let's look at some examples of a good photo and a bad photo, and I'm just going to flash them on the screen, all right? And we'll see how long it takes you to see what's a good photo and what's a bad photo. Okay, get ready. Here we go. Here's number one, and here's number two. Which one is a better photo? Okay, and how long that was half a second. That wasn't even a full second. That was half a second for each photo. That's how long it takes for people to form an opinion of your photos and to form an opinion of your shop. And if they come to your shop and they see a whole bunch of photos that are dark like that, it's not going to make a good impression, and they're probably not going to take the time to dig into your shop and look at more listings. They're just going to bounce off and go find someone who has better pictures. Remember that first impressions are very strong, and like I just showed you, it doesn't take long to form that impression. Something else that you can do in your listing photos on Etsy, which is very helpful for people, and it will prevent people from complaining or from being confused about the listing, is to use infographics in your listings. And we've done this for years. I have one infographic that has a picture of a finger clicking a heart that says favorite this, save it for later. And that tells people if you click the heart, it will go to your favorites. They might not know that, but that basically tells people what to do. And then you do tend to get favorites from that. I also have infographics about how to sign up for my email list. I've seen people put infographics in about the color choices that people have if they're choosing a color. You can put in a picture of a ruler with the item next to it, and that kind of counts as an infographic because it tells you about the size of the item. So there are a lot of things that you can put in, like fonts. If you do embroidery, put in the fonts and the thread color, anything that anybody has to choose. That's where you put the pictures in there. And the basic fact is now, especially on Etsy, they're making it extremely hard to find the descriptions. I go on Etsy sometimes and I can't find the description. It takes me time. And I've been on Etsy for, 13 years now? So if I'm having trouble, then someone who's just coming to Etsy for the first time is not going to be able to find that description. So the more information you can put in the listing photos itself, the better. And it will help people make the decision about what to buy. It'll help people send you information if it's a custom listing, and it will make them understand what you're actually selling. Another thing to keep in mind is that Etsy has recently started showing things in the square aspect ratio. So if you have a lot of text on your listing photos, like you have infographics, you might have to go in and edit them so that the whole thing shows up. Because if you click through to the listing, they will still show in the correct format, meaning, like the full photo. But in the listing images themselves, if they're just scrolling through, it might not. It might be shown square, it might be shown rectangle, and they seem to be moving to square for everything. So that's something to be aware of, and just pay attention to where you're putting your text on photos especially. But if you have a photo that you want cropped a certain way, you're going to have to make sure that it's displaying correctly on Etsy in a square format and not rectangular. As far as the size of photos go, it doesn't really matter. Etsy says they want these big photos, but that is ridiculous because nobody needs them that big. I do everything 1,000 pixels across the top, and I don't care how long it is, but that 1,000 pixels is big enough to enlarge, it's big enough to work, and I get that warning message from Etsy all the time. Your pictures aren't big enough. They're fine. They're fine. And then I can use that same photo on my website and on Go Imagine, and it's not too big that it slows my website down with all these giant photos loading up. It doesn't matter. So just keep in mind square, but the size itself, it doesn't need to be enormous and huge the way that Etsy says that it does. Another thing that I personally think is important, because I've had this experience myself, is to just have in the picture what you're selling. And I know that people use flat lays and mock-ups, and it has other things in the photos. And sometimes you want to do that for context or to show the size of things. But you have to be really careful, because a lot of times people think that they're getting everything in the picture when they buy the item. I don't know why, because you would think they would read, but no. So if you have a lot of props or you have a lot of extra things in the photo, you need to be careful. Number one, that the photo is clear that what you are looking at is the product that they're buying. Because I have actually seen pictures on Etsy sometimes where I'm not sure what the listing is for because there's so much stuff in the picture. So just be careful about that, and be mindful that when people are looking at a picture, you want the thing that you're selling to be the focal point so that they understand what they're going to be getting. Another thing that I see a lot is that people will have pictures of people with their eyes. And this is mostly for jewelry sellers, like they'll have a necklace or something with pictures of people's faces. When people look at, and this is a psychological thing too, when people look at a photo, the first thing they do is they look at the eyes. That's just a human nature thing. You look at someone's eyes first. You want the person to look at your product first. And this goes along with making sure that what you are selling is the focal point in the photo. So if you have, for example, necklaces or jewelry or something, just crop them. Don't even have eyes in there. Make sure that the thing that you're selling is the actual, focal point, and you're going to be better off because then people will look at that first, and that's a better impression. If you do sell print on demand, another Etsy rule that you need to be aware of is that you have to use mock-up photos that are provided by the print on demand company. You can't use random mock-up photos that you got somewhere else. And last year they started taking listings down because of this, and a lot of people were complaining because they had special mock-ups that they had made. That's fine, except that Etsy might take your listings down. So it's not fine, actually. So if you do sell print-on-demand products, you need to stick with the listing mock-ups that are provided by the printing company. Etsy's logic on that is that it will be the most accurate depiction of the size, and that's not as deceptive to customers if you are using a mock-up that's not an actual picture of the product. It's better if you have a print-on-demand company to actually buy the product and take your own pictures. And I'm not talking about taking one mock-up shot and then using that for everything. Because if you're doing a mock-up, again, you have to use the POD company's pictures. But I know that people don't want to spend money, but you have to, sometimes you have to spend money to run a business. It's better if you have actual photos of your products because people like that more. And how many times can we see the same mock-ups on Etsy without starting to say that girl's wearing a lot of t-shirts in a lot of different shops? What's up? So we understand mock-ups. Customers probably do to a certain extent, but it's always better to have your own photos. But if you do use POD mock-ups, only use the ones from the company that makes the actual product. If you have any questions about your pictures, post them, give this video a thumbs up, and next week I'm going to be talking about branding.